Welcome back to the Matt Return. I'm AJ Piazza.
I'm Andrew Deal.
And I'm Evan Smith.
And today we will be discussing some transfers that Penn State has gained in the portal, but has also lost, and have a little bit of some predictions for the lineup for next season. Andrew, what was your initial reaction to Rocco Welsh committing to Penn State?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure if he committed whenever he went on to Bashamania, Justin Bash's podcast, and he said, in the morning I was leaning Penn State, and when he said that, I was like, okay, so he's going elsewhere then.
Yeah.
Because typically that means you're going somewhere else if you're leaning one, and with the reports that David Taylor was like on his way to Rocco Welsh's house for breakfast, I was like, okay, maybe the rumors that meeting had been called off aren't true, and David Taylor was able to get a last-minute pitch in, and it worked. But then Rocco Welsh, right after that, said that night he decided he's going to Penn State, which was very anticlimactic. It was so sudden, and it really loads the entire lineup for Penn State now. We were talking before about the lightweights being loaded with a bunch of different guys potentially having opportunities, someone likely having a redshirt. Now we have to talk about the heavier weights doing the same thing. So it really loads it up, and this wrestling room just continues to get better. Rocco Welsh was a national runner-up 2 years ago, so you never want to turn down someone like that.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, and we'll get into this, but Penn State has another guy kind of slotted in there that he'll be competing with. But
yeah,
Evan, for you, this was a little bit of a confusing commitment, because you heard so many different things, and just what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I remember when he first entered the portal, it was, I believe, Matt Scouts on Twitter said it's to Penn State locked in. And we were all like, how does that make any sense?
Yeah,
especially because he came off being 174. Levi Haynes isn't likely going anywhere. But 184, I think we were all pretty excited for Zach Ryder, if not just for the wrestling, just for watching him on the big screen some more.
Yes.
And Carter Strachey apparently agrees. We saw that, Carter. Can't delete it fast enough. So we were confused based because it doesn't fill a need. We're still looking for a heavyweight, and I think we have our eyes on another guy in a pretty similar situation that rumors are he might enter the portal too. But you can't really complain when you get a former national runner-up. There's a lot of talk out there about, oh, this was an NIL move. I don't think it was, because Penn State didn't need Rocco Welsh, so I don't think they're going to pay that $1.8 million that there's people in my comment section dropping because they saw it on Reddit and think that's like an actual source.
Yeah, well,
ironically enough, from Iowa.
Right. I want to say that after he announced that he was going to Penn State, he talked about the money a bit and said that he was getting significant offers from other places, but he wasn't going to Penn State for the money. And, some people not Penn State fans won't believe that, obviously, but he explained it before he even announced his commitment that he needs to be somewhere that has an incredible wrestling room that is going to make him better. Going to Penn State, he's going to be able to every day wrestle Carter Strachey, Josh Barr, Zach Ryder, as long as he stays, Cale Sanderson, Aaron Brooks, Levi Haynes. You have some of the best wrestlers in the world right there for you. So I think that was the big reason, and he's coming home to his home state. I think that was another big reason for him coming to Penn State.
Yeah, sometimes it really is just that simple of the hometown guy, home state guy wants to come back home to objectively the best wrestling room in the country. And during some of the debates that I was listening into some Iowa fans, it's kind of the same way with Bo Bassett, where that $5 million number came out of nowhere. That wasn't true either. It's a case as simple of Iowa was his dream school, that's why he went there. It's the same thing probably with Rocco Welsh coming to Penn State. And case in point with Masa Ono, he can't get any NIL money as an international wrestler. Sometimes it is just that wrestling room is the advantage more than money.
Yeah, and he really made that clear when he was announcing his commitment and really making it official, like officially official.
Yeah.
Definitely think that Welsh being from PA played a big part in this commitment. And I've seen, especially with how the lineup could look next year, and we'll get into that a little later, but some people were like, "Oh, Haynes has a red shirt." Okay, Levi Haynes is not red. He's not red shirt. There's no way that's happening.
way.
Just gonna shut that down now. That's not happening. But I definitely think he'll be coming in as a 184 pounder, and I don't see any other really weight class he'd go into right now for next season. That could change obviously years following, because I believe he has 3 years of eligibility left.
Yeah, he'll enter as a redshirt sophomore.
That is crazy. That's crazy, but he will definitely be in competition with Zach Ryder, and I think that's just going to be entertaining to, hear about when we get into the offseason, and definitely think Penn State could be, making other moves, maybe looking at the heavyweight. We will see what happens with that, but right now, the only commitment they got is Welsh. Speaking of, wrestlers in the transfer portal, Alex Facundo, right before we did this podcast, going to a former Nittany Lion and David Taylor, and I feel like this was almost expected, but Andrew, what do you think about that?
Yeah, a lot of people predicted this. He's going to Oklahoma State. They are building one of the best wrestling rooms in the country. David Taylor said it himself when he was asked how to catch Kale in Penn State, that you have to build a great wrestling room, and you have a guy like Facundo who has international success. Couldn't really find a spot here at Penn State, which is kind of crazy because he'll probably All-American next year, and for the next 2 years, this is where eligibility gets really weird with wrestling. He has redshirted, Olympic redshirted, and I believe this year he medical redshirted.
So
he's redshirted 3 times.
Yep.
He'll be a sophomore next year, redshirt sophomore next year. So it'll be like Rocco Welsh, and it's a really talented wrestler that just couldn't find a spot here at Penn State. It reminds me of Terrell Barraclaw.
Yeah, Evan, I was going to compare him to a Terrell Barraclaw situation, but Evan, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just the issue for him was he started as a natural 165, and you had Mitchell Messenbrink come in, who obviously is going to beat out everyone in that weight class with a bullet. It might be interesting to see maybe if he does go back up to 165, where it's kind of debated on. That might be what he's thinking now that he gets back healthy. Could he be a better competition for Mitchell Messenbrink than the rest of that class has been, i.e. Mikey Caliendo being apparently the only guy even remotely close, if that. So I think it's inherently good for him, but what it talks about, shows for me, is the whole notion that for now, for the next few years, wrestling is just kind of a big top 3, Penn State, Oklahoma State, and then maybe a little bit further down, depending on the paychecks, Iowa.
And I think Nebraska hangs around too.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nebraska will be around, but with Facundo, it was just a tough spot for him at 157, and obviously 165 you have Messenbrink in front of you, and at 157 now you have Kasak, who was number 1 going into the NCAAs, and you also have PJ Duke coming in, where I think a lot of people will assume that he'd be in that backup role, and some have even talked about him potentially starting over Kasak, which I don't know about that. But I'd assume that he'd probably take that backup wrestler role behind Kasak, so that would bump Facundo down even further. And it just really didn't work out for him here at Penn State.
Well, what makes this interesting, it kind of reminded me of hearing something yesterday related to Rocco Welsh. He grew up, grew up wrestling in the same area as PJ Duke and Levi Haynes. If I remember correctly, it was like the same wrestling academy.
Okay.
And that aspect also played a factor into him coming to Penn State. So he's already been in contact with PJ Duke, and be interesting to see how that dynamic works.
Yeah, definitely something.
My question at the weight class is, what happens with Joe Seeley?
Yeah.
He was highly touted and kind of looked as maybe that next man up eventually. Now he's blocked at every corner, it seems like.
Yeah.
Does he stick around, or does he join the fray of lions that are trying to find better opportunities out there?
And don't use his performances from this year to kind of judge how he is as a wrestler. He was right off an injury, so you can't really be like, oh yeah, Joe Seeley doesn't look like he's fit for college wrestling yet. He looked better in his second match against Illinois, where he could have won.
Yeah, that was a controversial
Yeah.
call at the end there. And I agree. Joe Seeley's one of those guys that is just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And I believe, Andrew, me and you were talking about this before, but Penn State has to cut their roster down of a few wrestlers, I believe.
I created a Google sheet
Nice.
to try to like see where you can play around with
Yeah.
who's going where, what weight classes. I believe they're at 35 right now. They need to get down to 30.
So Joe
I
Seeley
believe.
could potentially be one of those,
Yeah.
Nittany Lions that end up leaving. And
Right.
he's someone I could honestly see joining in Oklahoma State if he decides to enter the portal. If not, there's so many things that could really happen. But I guess my next point here would be, who is there? I think we kind of all agree on where Penn State would hit next in the transfer portal. So I'll start with Evan here because I know that this is kind of what you were leaning towards before. But what would be your next prediction of a potential Penn State Nittany Lion that they get in the portal?
I mean, are we allowed to talk about guys who aren't in the portal?
I don't see why not.
'Cause-
Don't come at us if it happens.
Yeah,
we're not tampering.
Yeah, but I guess just what would be a guy that you'd like to see next year? I don't really know how to work this, but
Okay, well, I just kind of
I feel like
put it
we
out
have
there.
a consensus answer.
yeah,
on,
we have a consensus
on
answer.
the drive back from national championships. We were kind of debating those spots, and we all looked at 285 as like a Cole Marisalo, or it's Cole, right? At 285.
I believe so. I
Yes, it's
continue
Cole.
to get them mixed up.
It's Cole.
Yeah.
We're like, he just seems a bit undersized. We want more of a true heavyweight in there. And then we just kind of looked around the national fray, and the guy that we all looked at, Nick Feldman, another Pennsylvania native from Ohio State. I believe you guys said you saw him talking with some Penn State guys.
Yeah, we were down Matt's side as Penn State was celebrating the national championship, and to our right, which was in the stands, I hear a Nick, and this big guy in Ohio State stuff walks over and is talking to Penn State people, and turns out it's Nick Feldman from Ohio State, and obviously hasn't entered the portal. There's rumors he might. This might be like a domino effect.
Yeah.
See Rocco Welsh. He could be one of the next guys. They did just get Cody Chittum from Iowa State, who is a big pickup.
Yeah.
But Feldman from Pennsylvania, so would be like Welsh returning home. And he is set up to be one of the favorites at heavyweight next year. Heavyweight was such a loaded class this year with a lot of seniors. Feldman was a redshirt sophomore, so he'll have 2 more years.
Yeah, it's 8 out of the top 10 ranked seniors. Heavyweights are all seniors. And then I was just kind of looking down that list of who could we see transferring. The only name that stood out as a guy that a Penn State Nittany Lions would take was Nick Feldman.
Yeah, and again, the big point here is that another PA guy, and could follow a guy like Welsh, teammates and everything, or now former teammates, I guess.
Yeah.
But the big thing that I'd say potentially he would be is Penn State has an opening at heavyweight. Like with Welsh, they don't necessarily have an opening. Now, while it technically is, Zach Ryder is very highly touted as well.
Yeah. So
and
is
that will be
Cole Mirasola
exactly.
as well. The Mirasola,
And
both twins were highly touted as well. They were top 15 recruits. So,
and either way, I think they would have a competition at both.
yeah.
Just, and whatever happens with that. But I think that's the question mark in the lineup right now would be heavyweight for next year. And, we might as well get into that talk and, do some predictions for next year's lineup, because with Ono joining and Welsh now, there's a lot of, even some of the recruits like Marcus Blaze, PJ Duke, there's a lot of potential differences we could see in the lineup next year. So how do you guys want to do this? Do you want to do like 125 to heavyweight or okay?
So just go in order.
All right, so then at 125, I'm going to say that Luke Lildahl stays at 125. He seemed like he's pretty comfortable there, from what I heard. He's like,
yeah.
So and he because we heard
walking around at like 131, I believe he said, or something right around there.
okay.
But he was comfortable cutting the weight.
Yes.
From what it sounded like.
So I feel like we're kind of all in consensus with that, unless Evan or Andrew, do you guys have anyone else you could see at 125 next year?
No, I'll say Luke just based on the fact that I don't see who else could go there.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying Ono. He walks around 4 pounds heavier than Davis does. And the only reason he's able to get down to 125 internationally is because he only has to cut that weight like once every few months.
Right.
He's not going to be able to do that multiple times a week and still stay comfortable.
So we're going to get into that weight class now, 133. I believe this will be interesting because obviously a lot of expectations is that Ono will be at this weight class, but we could also see him at 141. Where do you guys think that, I guess, he'll really place in this lineup as of right now?
I think 133. I think he starts. And looking at this, someone from 133, whether it's a name that a lot of people know or a name that not many people know, someone else is going to transfer. There's 6 guys going into next year that are at 133. So someone from that weight class or right around that weight class will probably be going into the portal sometime soon. I think Ono fits 133. It'll depend if he's able to cut that weight and stay under that weight weekly. He hasn't ever had to do that weekly, which is going to be the big question.
I'm going to surprise both of you here. I'm saying Braden Davis keeps the 133 spot.
Wow. That is...
What
What happened? Yeah, are you okay today? Is something wrong?
It's just as simple as all that talk about Ono keeping that weight down. I think they're better off just letting him get stronger, go up to 141 as he focuses on training to, learn the ground game and learn freestyle wrestling. I think that's the technical one. Or is it folk?
He's been freestyle.
Yeah, college
this
is folk style.
Yeah.
I know what they both are. The names get back and forth. Because of that, I just think the smartest decision is keep Davis at 133. Marcus Blaze, have him redshirt. I know he's really highly touted, but especially in this era of college wrestling, it seems like those highly touted guys aren't afraid to take a redshirt. See Angelo Ferrari for Iowa that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
So the most logical thing for me is Davis has one more year. Got 5th place at Nationals. He's a former Big Ten champion. It's not like he's a weak spot in the lineup.
Yeah.
He has 2 more years.
Yeah, he does have 2 more years.
He'll be a junior next year.
Yeah.
I believe.
So, wow, that shocked me. Andrew, way to have your headphones on wrong. Just want to point that out.
They felt really weird. I had to, look
know,
at them real quick. And
you've sat in that chair how many times and you still don't know? Okay.
Dude's on the wrestling beat and doesn't know how to work his headgear.
All right, that's a good one.
That was a good one. See, for me, I've gone back and forth with this because I say, oh no, right? And then sometimes I say, well, I agree with Evan. Have him wrestle at 141 and let him get stronger, and then have Davis stay at 33. But I also think that I don't know if Davis can stay at 133.
Right.
So for now, I'm gonna say oh no at 133. But I could see a world where, and it would not surprise me if Davis was at 33 and Ono was at 141 next year. And speaking of 141, Andrew, can I assume you have Marcus Blaze in that weight class?
Yes, I do. I believe he fits better at 41. Some people say he could go to 33. I don't necessarily see that.
Yeah.
And he's wrestled way up to fit a weight class that was weaker for his high school, and he's also wrestled further down. So there is that aspect where I guess he could wrestle 33 if he needs to, but I think he fits 41 better and immediately becomes that 4-year starter at 41, replacing the former 4-year starter, Bo Bartlett.
See, the only reason I have Ono taking the spot is because if you look at Blaze's resume, the only notable guy to really beat him is Masanosuke Ono at the World Teen Trials. So it's basically a case of you got 3 guys battling for 2 spots.
Yeah.
But I think that 133 spot doesn't fit either Blaze or Ono. And if it's between those two at 141, it's Ono's spot.
Yeah, I agree with that. For just my prediction from before, I'll say that I have Blaze at 41 as well. Even though I could see either Blaze or Ono being there, and if it's between the two, it is Ono's spot. And
correct.
I think that's pretty obvious for all of us.
There's, like you said, 3 wrestlers, 2 spots.
Yep.
Ono is not sitting.
No.
Like, I could see him not starting the season if he has to, because he has to transition to this.
True.
folk style. If they don't think he's comfortable enough yet, I could see him not starting the season. But when you're getting into like the new year, 2026, it's going to be Ono. You're not having a world champion sit.
Yeah, and I think with that, I could see it where maybe he doesn't wrestle against some of what would be considered the weaker schools that Penn
Yeah.
State versus early on in the year. But I also could see it where they would want him to wrestle immediately just because, he does have to learn this new style. I don't know how much different it really is. And he's also, been training with the wrestling club.
Yeah.
So it's not like he definitely doesn't have, I'd say, any experience.
Right.
But I doubt he sits at all next season. I think he will go right in immediately.
Yeah.
I honestly, more than either of them going down, I could see Marcus Blaze going up and taking Shane Van Ness's spot, potentially.
Ooh.
Well,
If-
that's where I'm going right now.
Yeah. If Blaze is as highly touted as he is, like, I could see
Yes,
it happening.
it wouldn't surprise me, but that's not what
I'm not going
doing.
to predict it, but I can see it as a possibility.
It's funny that you say that because in between the 141 to 149, 157, not the weak link, but the person's spot I could see being taken the most likely would be Van Ness. I doubt K-Sack. I know there's a thing with K-Sack and redshirting. I don't think he's going to get redshirted, but at 149 right now, it's Shane Van Ness. And while I think as of right now he will be there next year, there definitely is somewhere I could see. Plus, hasn't Ono wrestled guys heavier than him?
Yes.
So far?
That's been
That's
the
the
report out
report.
there.
That he's beaten Penn State guys heavier than him.
Well, what if?
Correct.
What if?
He did. It was clearly a joke, but he did say he could wrestle anywhere from 125 to 157. He was laughing during it,
Obviously.
so it was clearly a joke. But
If we're really getting into it,
it
what if
he could be 49. You never know.
What if he is? But I'd say Van Ness is there right now. And
Yeah.
do either of you guys disagree with that?
No. It's
Yeah.
too early to predict that. You can see it maybe later in the season. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at this season, we all thought Cochran was going to start at 197.
True.
Look how that ended up, so.
Yeah. And good news for Van Ness. Reg Lovett's a senior. So the guy who he lost to twice no longer will have to face.
Yeah. And so now we'll move on to 157, where I do think this will be a competition. I do think Duke will get a shot. I'm not saying he will wrestle at all.
I think it'll be hyped up to be a competition. I don't think it'll be as much of a
I agree.
competition.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Tyler K-Sack was one of the surprises last year, and do you guys think he deserves another shot at that to be a national champion at 157 next year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
think it's
exactly.
like a
I don't even
one-word
know how to really
discussion.
word that because it's just one of those more obvious.
We have to
ones.
hear his
Yeah,
walk-up,
that was so.
his intro song.
Yeah, that was
The vibes for 157 after Kazak lost just went out.
Oh, rip.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Um,
I think it's K-Sack's spot.
Needed some excuse to get into that.
PJ Duke.
I think he'll redshirt.
Yeah.
I
So-
think it's K-Sack's spot, and I don't see a world where he loses
Right.
it at all. And he doesn't deserve to. He was,
Yeah.
solid for Penn State this year.
Yeah, but this next weight class, I don't know who I'm going to pick.
Oh, yeah, 165 is a real tough one. Andrew, I'm going to start with your prediction. Who do you think is going to be 65?
Yeah, I'm calling it right now. Mitchell Messenbrink's winning the Hodge next
Bold
year.
take. Ooh. Oh.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
Okay.
Messenbrink is winning the Hodge next year.
I mean, honestly, if you try to look nationally, outside of picking some sort of surprise, I don't know who else you could.
Right.
Yeah,
Dave.
that's fair. That's fair. Even though only 3 votes. Only 3 votes.
I mean, I'm not shocked. It was
His competition really hurt. Like
fair.
his weight class is one of the weaker weight classes overall, especially compared to Starachi and Matt
Definitely.
Hendrickson,
Yeah.
where 84 and heavyweight were probably the 2 most loaded ones.
Yeah, you can say he deserved more. It's just this year
Right.
there was a big top 4. One of those top 4 is lost in the national finals, so those top 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And out of those, Strachey and Wyatt Hendrickson, nationally speaking, are just on another level, even if it's just the fame aspect of it, where Messenbrink's going to have to wait a year to get that more votes.
Yeah. So obviously Messenbrink 165 and 174. I think we kind of agree as well.
Yeah, he's not redshirting.
He's not
like,
redshirting.
It's just not going to happen.
Putting that down. It's Levi Haynes. I'm just going to
Right.
skip it. There's no.
Yeah.
No.
My God, he loses one match.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
He comes in third. His first year in the weight
Loses
class,
to
and
two seniors.
Yeah, loses to the two last national champions.
it's crazy. It's crazy, but that's how it is these days. So moving on to 84, Rocco Welsh or Zach Ryder,
Well, you go first.
or someone else that I just am unaware of.
Yeah, there's some questions as to we've seen some.
Max McAnally. That's
No.
people are just throwing out like the most random rumors now. There's like
Yeah.
now they're saying Vince Robertson's gonna transfer to Iowa too. I'm like, I watched that guy crying, hugging his coach for like 10 minutes straight.
Yeah, he's not.
It's stuff like that's not gonna happen.
Right.
If Max McAnally does enter the transfer portal, whatever, somebody can leave in the comments some like crazy bet for me to do, and I'll do it. I don't.
Yeah, I don't, he's the next like big name at
Yeah.
Minnesota. It's he. I don't.
And
see
in the
him
weight
leaving.
class, if you think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were talking about the whole Ryder McAnally Ferrari rivalry to be really fun next year. I guess Rocco Welsh is going to be the one to take it.
so you're saying
So you're
Rocco
saying
Welsh?
Yeah, I'm going to pick Welsh.
I also think it's Rocco Welsh. I think Ryder sits if he can, drops down to 74 the year following because Haynes is graduating. But then you add the aspect of Jaden James.
But there's also some people saying potentially Haynes moves up to 184.
Then who's
Okay, well,
74?
Would be
That's-
which would just be Welsh at 74. So it's
But
okay.
Welsh said he fits better. He's going to wrestle the world's at 74. It's kilograms, but and that because he only has to weigh in like 3 times. If for him weighing in weekly, he fits better 84.
Yeah. This is a tougher one for me because Zach Ryder in his redshirt season, he had some impressive wins.
Yeah.
Some ranked wins too. And I just think that Rocco Welsh would not transfer to Penn State. Not necessarily I'm not saying he's guaranteed a starting spot, but he's already redshirted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really see it where he, comes to Penn State to just sit another year. So I'm
That
gonna
wouldn't
say
make
it's
any
Welsh,
sense.
but I wouldn't be shocked if it was similar to the Josh Barr, Lucas Cochran thing,
Yeah.
where like you see one of them first and then another one, and then based off that, the Penn State or Cale will just choose which one and rock with that guy. So I'll say Welsh for now, but I wouldn't be shocked if Ryder got in there. Speaking of 97, Lucas Cochran's still has another year, and Josh Barr, runner up at 197, and I'm assuming he'll be in that spot again.
Yeah, I don't see a world where he goes elsewhere. I guess the original plan was he goes back down to 184 this year, but all the reports are saying they look at him as already put on a good amount of weight.
Right.
Now he's got a whole offseason
Yep.
to actually focus on it, and even with that weight disadvantage and at least one injury, he made it to the national championship match. So
Yeah.
against a senior who's not going to be an issue going forward.
Right. He
You
probably
can't take him out of that weight class.
enters as the favorite or one of the favorites.
Don't forget AJ Ferrari.
Right. I was going to say him and AJ Ferrari are probably the top 2 in this weight class.
So Josh Barr will take a huge step if he just starts wearing organic underwear
Or using bamboo toilet paper.
or
Yeah.
crying and throwing his phone because he lost a chess match or something.
Okay.
Maybe it's the mullet.
Yeah.
Moving
I don't know.
moving on to the final weight class, heavyweight. I have a pretty bold prediction for this one, but I want to hear you guys first.
Andrew can go first. I think mine's bolder.
Yeah, I'm going to go Cole Mirasola. I think
Okay.
a whole year fully as a heavyweight, he really grows into the heavyweight body. And that aspect, I think, is enough where he was also a big-time recruit, him and his twin brother. And I don't see them going to the portal too much. And
Yeah.
just you have a guy that's obviously you trusted enough because he wrestled 2 times during the year. They didn't end up in wins, but he clearly was the undersized guy in both matchups. So 2 guys who were heavyweight bodies, and now with a full year to grow into that college heavyweight body, I think he gets the spot.
Gable Stevenson's age 31 season.
All right.
All right.
Okay, now, I want to say the guy that we talked about earlier, but I'm not gonna. actively predict somebody who's not on the roster or even in the portal yet. So I think I got to agree with Andrew on Cole Mirasala. With that said, though, when it comes to heavyweight, I don't think you can grow that much to be truly effective, which is why I'm just not really sold on Mirasala as a heavyweight. But like, I'll be excited to be wrong. But with that weight class, just the discrepancy in weight all the way up to 285, I'm never going to prefer a guy down at, say, right at that 220 barrier.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna make a bit of a bolder prediction, as I believe this wrestler has wrestled at 285. Yes, one time before. One time.
Oh, I know where you're going.
I'm
now.
gonna say
Okay.
Lucas Cochran.
Okay.
I'm gonna say Lucas Cochran, and that's just as of right now. Obviously, more things could unfold as we get deeper into the offseason. But again, I agree. I don't think Penn State will hit the portal too much, but I could see a heavyweight. I think Kale really likes Lucas Cochran, and he has wrestled at heavyweight before. Now, while it's only like one time, I still think that experience could help him, but I do think it would be in a competition with Cole Mirasola. I don't think that's something that would just be really given to anyone. But yeah, just to be different, I'll say Lucas Cochran.
Okay.
Is my 285 prediction right now. That'll do it for this episode of the Matt Return. I'm AJ Piazza.
I'm Andrew Deal.
And I'm Evan Smith.